My name is Beth Bennett. I'm from Valparaiso. Thank you for joining us today. Today you will be hearing a debate on least restrictive procedures, zero tolerance versus positive behavior supports, or PBS. Allow me to introduce you to the rest of the team. First, we have Stacy Gerards from South Carolina. She will be opening up our debate with opening statements on the side of PBS. Then I, Beth Bennett, I'm from Valparaiso, Indiana, will be opening up for the side of zero tolerance. Next, allow me to introduce Soraya Lima from Tampa, Florida. She will offer a rebuttal on the side of PBS. And last but certainly not least, we have Zakia from Washington State, who will counter with a rebuttal on the side of zero tolerance. Now to you, Zakia.
Thank you. Why are we having this debate? There is public discourse regarding the use of positive behavior supports or zero tolerance policies. Schools have an obligation to educate students with a variety of gifts and talents, as well as needs and abilities and challenging behaviors. While schools have an obligation to keep students and school people safe with the least restrictive environments, some behaviors are very dangerous and severely disruptive to the school environment. There are two trains of thought to address these severe and dangerous behaviors in the school settings. One is to enforce the rules by systematically teaching students pro-social behaviors, and that's through positive behavior supports. And the other is to enforce school rules through suspending or expelling students who are presenting challenging behaviors, thus the zero tolerance for these behaviors. Another reason for this debate is evidence-based research in support of PBS and in opposition to zero tolerance. Even so, there are school districts still with zero tolerance policies. On the other hand, when addressing the most severe and dangerous behaviors, such as threats of violence or illegal behaviors, PBS may not sufficiently address the immediacy of the given situation, or at least at last resort may still have to use suspension or expulsion while additional supports are developed. The issue between PBS and zero tolerance is how to keep students safe while ensuring access to public education. And there's another introduction. In Van Halten et al., The Right to Effective Treatment, researchers outline a list of clients' rights that include the right to therapeutic environment, treatment with a goal of personal welfare, treatment focused on functional skills, and programs employing the most effective procedures. Problem behavior is the single most common reason why students are removed from regular classrooms. Students with extreme behavior problems represent 20% of the school environment, but they account for more than 50% of behavioral incidents. I'm sorry, my printer has some weird stuff going on. And then it says, in times of stress, a school's changes are and may occur and implement strategies to promote safe. And now to the opening statements for PBS.
Okay, positive behavior support is a function-based approach to eliminate problem behaviors and replace them with pro-social skills. Positive behavioral support is a blend of empirically validated procedures, behavioral science, and durable system change. It involves data-based decision-making using functional behavioral assessment and ongoing monitoring of the intervention. Positive behavior support places a strong emphasis on socially important outcomes and can be used to target an individual student or an entire school. It is successful with a wide range of students, environments, and behaviors. Due to that, it does not exclusively focus on the student, but it also includes changing environmental variables. PBS interventions have three general characteristics. They A, operate from a person-centered perspective, B, work to individualize supports to meet students' needs, and C, achieve meaningful outcomes for people receiving these supports. All students, both disabled and non-disabled, can benefit from positive behavior supports. When correctly implemented, they can lead to dramatic effects on an individual's lifestyle, functional communication skill, and problem behavior. Schools that implement system-wide interventions report increased time engaged in academic activities and improved academic performance, and interventions for problem behavior prevention indicate reductions in office discipline referrals of 20 to 60%. Research conducted over the past 15 years show that positive behavior supports is an effective strategy in promoting positive behaviors in students and schools. The use of these strategies to maintain appropriate social behaviors makes schools safer, and safer schools make for more effective learning environments. Review of research shows that there is over 90% reduction in problem behavior in over half of the studies, and that problem behavior stopped entirely in over 26% of the studies of those who participate in positive behavior support programs. Positive behavior support is proactive. It focuses on prevention of problem behaviors and early access to effective behavior support. It is culturally competent and family-friendly and has the promise to produce behavioral gains that have a significant and durable impact on the academic, social, and living options available to the individuals. According to IDA 97, positive behavior support is the recommended form of intervention for dealing with challenging behavior in children and disabilities. Furthermore, in 1997, the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs, in collaboration with Safe and Drug-Free Schools, supported a Center for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports with a grant of almost $600,000. And the U.S. government continues to support a project at the University of Kansas to promote programs through the use of positive behavior supports to decrease challenging behaviors in children and youth with disabilities. On to zero tolerance.
All right, thank you, Stacy. All right, my name is Beth, and I'm doing the opening statements for zero tolerance. I'd like you to imagine for a moment that your son comes running into the house with his friends, and they're in the midst of an intense Nerf battle. And you hear him say, "Hey, let's bring these to school tomorrow, and we'll get Sally at recess." You pause for a moment, and you can just hear the phone ring. It's the school. Your kindergartner has just been expelled from school for gun violence. So you calmly reply, "Honey, you know you can't bring a gun to school. You'll get kicked out." He puts his hands on his hips. With a little bit of an attitude, he says, "There's no way I'll get kicked out, Mom. There's this kid in our class. He screams bad words all day and throws pencils at the teacher, and he's been there every single day, and he does it all the time." You're a little stunned. You kind of don't know what to say, but you're snapped back into action by flying Nerf darts. Well, that about sums it up, right? What are we teaching our children with the programs that we put into place? Yes, I am pro zero tolerance, and this scenario is a perfect example why a policy such as zero tolerance began in our schools. According to a report compiled by Russell Skiba in 2000, zero tolerance aims to create a safe learning environment for our students who want to learn. Research conducted by Simison, Suga, and Nigran in 2008 also suggests that the majority of educators feel frustrated by the impact that student behavior has on their school. However, implementing school-wide behavioral approaches require training and funding that many schools cannot afford, according to research by Lagoon. So this brings us to the next reason. According to the report compiled by Skiba in 2000, zero tolerance policy ensures that the negative behaviors demonstrated by these students cannot be imitated by others, the students that are in the school that want to learn. I will also add that it also conveys the message that there are consequences for actions, which may or may not be the case for the programs that we are implementing into our schools. Zero tolerance addresses any infraction, no matter the severity, with the same intensity with some form of removal through suspension or expulsion. Those in favor of zero tolerance suggest that in doing so, the threat is removed. This enables the students that are still in the learning environment to continue to learn, one, without fear of harm, and two, it enables the educators to focus on the academic learning and spend less efforts trying to minimize the ripple effect that the behavior of one student may create to an otherwise calm learning environment. It is true that zero tolerance policies have been abused and have been taken to the extremes. However, the overall philosophical intent underlines the core principles of do not harm, which, if used appropriately, has its place in schools today. All right, on to you, Soraya, for the rebuttal.
Thank you, Beth, but we believe that zero tolerance don't protect clients' rights. As Sakia mentioned before, in Van Hunter, the right to effective treatment, researchers outlined a list of client rights that include the right to a therapeutic environment, treatment with the goal of personal welfare, treatments focused on functional skills, and programs employing the most effective procedures. And zero tolerance procedures conflict with these clients' rights. First, the right to a therapeutic environment is in question when a child is expelled from the school, when treatment takes place, and in some cases, expulsion from a school may be a necessity to keep other students and staff safe, but it's not a permanent solution and it doesn't teach new replacement behaviors. Second, zero tolerance procedures such as expelling a student from a school for up to 1 year restricts the student from access treatments in the school setting when they have the greatest need. Esquiva 2006. Third, a great concern and dilemma is the duty to teach functional skills, and the purpose of behavior analysis is to teach behaviors that help an individual function in a variety of settings such as school, home, and community, both immediately and in the future. And at this point, zero tolerance as it is practiced simply eliminates a child from the learning environment without ever teaching alternative and social appropriate behaviors that would achieve the goal of behavior analysis. Van Hunter, 1998. A fourth ethical dilemma is that zero tolerance is not the most effective treatment procedure for addressing maladaptive behaviors. The behavior analyst has the duty to use the most effective treatment procedures. And zero tolerance has not been proven to be an effective treatment for the behavior is used to address. Other people argue that dangerous behavior needs to be immediately addressed. And perhaps there are instances where punishment behavior are necessary. However, according to U.S. Department of Health and Human Services in 2001, school is a proactive factor against delinquent conduct. And suspending and removing a student from school removes that protective factors and puts a student at greater risk for engaging in delinquent behaviors. Services 2002. Zero tolerance policies apply punishment to everyone across the board, regardless of risk factors. Another study by Mendes, 2003, found that out-of-school suspension is a predictor of future suspension in the elementary, middle school population. It also found that school suspensions contribute to poor academic and failure to graduate. In fact, 3 years after being excluded from school, almost 70% of these young have been arrested. Behavior analysts use reinforcement strategy first, and the principle of reinforcement should always remain in place. A student should be reinforced for appropriate behavior or for not engaging in the behavior you are trying to eliminate. Evidence from the study conducted by Mendes also suggests that students handled by punishment alone are less likely to succeed. Going back to you.
So, though school is a protective factor, oh, I'm doing zero tolerance rebuttal. Though school is a protective factor against delinquent conduct, it is not the only protective factor. Instances of weapons, fights, very disruptive and dangerous behaviors still occur in the school setting. According to research on PBS, there's a lack of data on the actual amount to which such systems have or have not improved school safety. In addition, research by Utley et al. Suggests that teachers, principals, and school systems are not adequately prepared to handle the demands of implementing an intensive three-tiered classroom or school-wide discipline system that PBS requires. Their research suggests that personnel do not feel prepared to deal with the issues of classroom discipline and management along with the educational demands. Even though zero tolerance applies punishment policies across the board, it's generally for students presenting the greatest disruption and are in the greatest need. Implementation of PBS involves a massive collaboration between participants. Principals and teachers feel poorly trained to apply PBS correctly. Many students at risk for suspension due to conduct or who face expulsion may lack additional protective factors that the school is not equipped to address. This may be a matter that social services, medical professionals, law enforcement, or family preservation services may be more equipped to handle. And now to some questions back and forth between PBS and the Zero Tolerance Group.
Sure. I would like to ask the first question. And as I mentioned before about the Van Hunter article with the right to effective treatments, and I just want to, mention the right before again is the right to a therapeutic environment, treatment with the personal welfare. We have treatment focused on functional skills and programs employing the most effective procedures. So I would like to know how does zero tolerance will protect clients' rights?
Well, to answer that question, taking a position of zero tolerance for the most disruptive and dangerous procedures, and behaviors that can be presented in schools is not designed to be a treatment plan. It's created to be a discipline policy that keeps students safe at school. Schools have an obligation to all the students and the staff at school, not only to the student engaging in the maladaptive behaviors. Stakeholders and partners have differing and sometimes conflicting obligations. A therapist has the obligation to ensure the therapeutic environment, but the school district has the obligation to ensure the positive learning environment. Both the therapist and the school are both concerned with the student's welfare, but the school has the additional obligation to the parents, other students, and the staff. In terms of teaching functional skills, while PBS does address them and zero tolerance does not, even if teachers and schools have that policy in place, as stated in the research, they are not fully equipped to implement the demands of PBS without a therapist or a behavior coach. Research by Utley et al. Suggests that data collection and analysis of treatment effectiveness is difficult and can be unsuccessful in school settings. Treatments are only effective when personnel have the expertise and time to implement them. If the treatment plan is already in place for a child, zero tolerance policies would be the very last resort, and this is supported by the BCBA Ethics Code. If a treatment plan was not in place, research suggests that in this case, very dangerous or disruptive behaviors, removal may be the best immediate option until a PBS or treatment plan can be written.
Oh, thank you, Sakia, for your answer. And I have a second question, and is that zero tolerance policies promote school suspensions. Do you think that suspension and the possibility of dropping out of school is in the best interest of the student and of the community?
Well, great question again. First, suspension can take a variety of forms. According to the Department of Education, there are in-school suspensions. There are school detentions for behaviors when people break the rules. There are times where a child may need to be separated for their peers in like a self-contained classroom. Essentially, they're suspended from the class. Yet it might be the best place for them to get the support that they need at the time. The length of suspension can be altered as well. You mentioned that up to a year can be very excessive, but according to the Department of Education, a 10-day suspension does not increase the likelihood of a child dropping out of school, but it can act as a period of time to create the very intervention that PBS suggests while keeping the other school children safe. Dropping out of school is definitely not the best thing for society, but neither is subjecting others to the behaviors that severely interfere with the learning environment. That's all I have for that answer. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, I would like to ask PBS some questions. In the PBS model, there are 3 tiers or levels of interventions for students. Tier 1, interventions support the behavior of the majority of students. In Tier 2, those whose behaviors need greater interventions than Tier 1 can provide. And then there's Tier 3, whose behaviors are severe enough to require immediate intensive support. Is zero tolerance policy of expulsion ever required for Tier 3?
There definitely needs to be, the take on PBS is that there needs to be a crisis intervention in place for those children. An individualized, intense plan should be developed with more support services provided that include comprehensive supports delivered in both the school and in the community. A functional behavioral assessment that reveals the antecedent, frequency, intensity, the duration, and consequence of the challenging behavior needs to be done before an intervention can be put into place. Once that assessment is completed, a positive behavior support plan should be created that is individualized and data-based. It should include procedures for monitoring, evaluating, and reassessing the process. This needs to be a collaborative effort among the parents, the school psychologists, teachers, counselors, and administrators. All partners should be committed to the plan and its implementation. So basically, if a child does engage in dangerous behaviors, I'm sure that it does require for them to temporarily be removed while it's being assessed, or to be able to, as Zakiya had said earlier, maybe be put into an environment that those behaviors can be assessed and find out what is the function of that behavior, and an intervention set up that can be worked so that they can be worked back into the school environment, and those behaviors can be worked on, and not just expulsion after expulsion of the child and then failure, and then they're in a system that they're not able to get into a normal school community environment.
All right, thank you, Stacey. One more question. Zero tolerance was introduced initially to address illegal and disruptive, dangerous behaviors. In order to create a level 3 intervention, several steps need to be taken. How does PBS address those immediate illegal behaviors, seriously dangerous behaviors, while those steps are being taken? And I think you kind of touched on that.
Yeah, briefly did. Practice is to develop there's a couple things. They look at the get touch. This is what usual practice is, a get touch or zero tolerance approach to disciplining students exhibiting these behaviors. This was seen in Sagai and Horner in 2006. Fostering the zero tolerance practice is the undisputed assumption that the use of the punishment techniques in isolation will change the behavior. The traditional school discipline ladder typically relies on the use of repeated warnings, reprimands, loss of privileges, corporal punishment, in-school and after-school detention, in-school and out-of-school suspension, and expulsion to address behavioral infractions. Unfortunately, that traditional approach is highly reactive in nature and often treats the student as an individual who has displayed some crime that needs to be addressed through punitive consequences. The flawed assumption is that the student will learn the proper ways of behaving in order to avoid the consequence outlined on the traditional discipline ladder. However, researchers have discovered that such approaches are ineffective for students displaying chronic behavioral concerns and often exacerbate the display of antisocial behavior in these students, seen by Lewis and Sugai and Kolb in 1998. In fact, and Mayer, 1995. In fact, Mayer noted that higher rates of problem behavior in schools were closely associated with punitive disciplinary strategies, lack of clarity regarding rules, expectations, and consequences, limited staff support, and failure to respect and provide accommodations for individual differences. Additionally, Lipsey in 1991 found that the least effective responses to disruptive behavior in schools were the use of traditional counseling, psychotherapy, and punitive discipline strategies. Unfortunately, punitive disciplinary strategies seek to remove the student from the educational environment, depriving them of important educational opportunities. As a result, many of these students simply drop out of school due to the lack of environment support to address their academic and behavioral deficits. Most policies at this point are not advocating for complete removal of the traditional strategies used to discipline students who exhibit problem behaviors that disrupt learning. However, they are suggesting that the strategies need to be redesigned in order to make the problem behaviors more ineffective, inefficient, and irrelevant. In addition to the philosophy of school personnel within the educational system has to be reconceptualized so that the view of disciplinary strategies as teaching techniques designed to equip the student with replacement behaviors that can be reinforced when properly displayed. In other words, educational environments must be rearranged so that students are directly taught expected behaviors, provide ongoing opportunities to practice the display of desired behaviors, and receive frequent and contingent reinforcement for the display of the pro-social behaviors that they have learned. Hope that answers your question.
Well, thank you, Stacy. I think that was a great answer. And I would like to summarize the side of PBS. And I want to start saying that all students, both disabled and not disabled, can benefit from PBS. Positive behavior support is proactive. It focuses on prevention of problem behaviors and early access to effective behavior support. Is culturally friendly, is culturally competent and family friendly, and has the promise to produce behavioral gains that have a significant and durable impact on academic, social, and living options available to individuals. Currently, implement PBS can lead to dramatic effects on an individual's lifestyle, functional communication skills, and problem behaviors. Schools that implement system-wide interventions report increased time engaged in academic activities and improve academic performance. An intervention for problem behaviors prevention and indicate reduction in office disciplinary referrals up to 20 to 60%. Harsh punishment and zero-tolerance policies have not been effective and either improving behavioral climates in school or preventing a student with problem behaviors from entering the juvenile justice system. Very few will argue that when it comes to school violence, immediately and serious action must be taken. What needs to be argued is that what policies are in place that prevent school violence and prevent further suspensions, expulsions, and drop-out for at-risk students. How can educators, parents, and students come together in sharing the responsibility instead of getting rid of the problem? To create a an effective PBS plan that will be appropriate for all involved. It is critical to provide an atmosphere that includes high expectation, respectful interactions between both student and staff, parents' involvement, and a sense of order and discipline and caring relationships. A school that recognizes this and implements positive behavior support will show reductions in problem behaviors and an increase in academic activities and academic performance. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Beth Bennett. I'm going to do the closing statements for zero tolerance. Research on the pro side of PBS uses the argument that high rates of problem behavior in school is related to the use of punitive discipline. A lack of clarity regarding rules and expectations and limited staff support and a failure to accommodate individual differences. However, even when rules are clear and illegal, dangerous behaviors are stated and not allowed, students continue to engage in those behaviors for a variety of reasons. In the end, no matter how much schools try to teach new replacement behavior, when it is dangerous or very disruptive to the learning environment, a student may need to be removed from the class or even the school. Limited staff support to implement PBS effectively is widely studied and confirmed. With the best intentions and plans for three-tiered school-wide intervention plans, coupled with classroom behavior management systems and the most intensive individual behavior plans, teachers and principals continue to report that they're ill-equipped to handle both the demands of effective PBS implementation and to address the most disruptive and dangerous behaviors. While in schools it is important to accommodate the need of individual students with a disability or is need of individual behavior supports, the need of students displaying appropriate behaviors and of those that are not in need of additional supports must also be addressed. It is agreed zero tolerance alone does not improve a student's behavior, but it is designed to discourage or remove the presence of inappropriate behaviors. Even if it's a temporary measure so that more comprehensive measures can be put in place, zero tolerance for dangerous and disruptive behaviors may be a necessary step. I'm Beth Bennett. Thank you for joining us for this debate today.